Hello and welcome to Cricket House Gaming. Here at Cricket House Gaming, we like to explore the gameplay of simulation games, usually through a series of Let's Plays. In this episode, we will continue to explore the gameplay of Democracy 4. Democracy 4 is a political sim that lets you choose the role of a world leader and govern a country. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here, welcome, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any future episodes. In our last episode, we were re-elected as Chancellor of Germany, but we have a coalition government. In this episode, we will be exploring the first year as Chancellor of Germany with a coalition government. Let's get into the gameplay. Support democracy protesters. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. Street protests are taking place in a foreign country with historical ties to us. We do a lot of profitable trade with this country, but their government is authoritarian and we face pressure to openly support the cause of the street protesters. Support the protesters. Do we believe in democracy or not? This should not be complicated. If the government is showing authoritarian tendencies and we believe the protesters have a point, then we should stand by our principles and back them, not keep quiet because it earns us money in trade deals to look the other way. Make no comment. We would be angered if we faced protesters in our streets, as all democracies do, and foreign leaders started openly backing the protesters against our government. It would be terrible for our diplomatic relations with this trading partners if we took the side of a relatively small number of protesters in the street. We will make no comment. The liberals are unhappy at -10%. Situation imminent. Our data is showing that we have a potentially bad situation, cyberbullying on our hands if we do not act soon. Polls report the government is not popular amongst its citizens. Only 39% of them intend to vote for you in the next election. The election report. Our party, the New Right, is getting more support. In the last quarter, 237,711 new people signed up to be members. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as loyal. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be fair. Budget report. We currently have a minor budget deficit of 436.61 million euro, but this is no cause for major concern. Security briefing. Intelligence services report a growing concern about a relatively small extremist religious organization known as Angels of Heavenly Justice. We should keep a close eye on their activity. We have 13 political capital to spend. Our transportation minister is unhappy with us. Let us fire her. It will cost no political capital. We will hire Medar Schumacher for transport minister. His suitability is 53%. The law and order minister is now unhappy with us, but it will take one political capital to fire him. We will not be doing so. Let us take a look at our expenditure. State pensions. Rather than leave it up to the individual to provide for themselves after retirement, state pensions can guarantee a minimum standard of living for the elderly. Be aware that as life expectancy rises, the cost to the state of paying out pensions increases hugely. The level of state pension may encourage or discourage citizens to save in private pension plans. This is 77% popular with the vote. We will spend 8 political capital to lower this. This will save our government 6.07 billion euro. We will apply the changes. We have 5 political capital to spend. Cyberbullying awareness campaign, a program of adverts on TV, radio, online, and billboards to warn parents and teachers to look out for signs their children are being bullied online so that the problem can be spotted early and dealt with before it affects the children's mental health. This is 100% popular with the vote. This will reduce our internet crime. We will implement this policy. We will apply the changes. We have 3 political capital to spend. Congestion charging. In many large cities, the number of cars traveling in each day is simply unsustainable. Although a fairly blunt instrument, simply charging through number plate recognition every vehicle that enters a city each day has proven to be an effective way to reduce congestion in extreme cases. We shall be spending 3 political capital to increase this. It will bring some money into our government. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we're at the end of our first term, of our first year as Chancellor of Germany in a coalition government. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the second term of our first year in our coalition government. Let's see how we did. Offer from your coalition partner. There's an offer from your coalition partner which will provide us with much needed political capital if you accept this proposal. We will earn 5 extra political capital if we reduce the income tax from 48% to 35%. Let us accept that offer. Mass sentencing. Hundreds of prisoners have been sentenced in a single hearing, violating international standards for a fair trial. The facts of each individual's case cannot possibly have been properly considered during this travesty of justice. Situation imminent. Our data is showing that that we will have a potentially bad situation, environmental protests on our hand if we do not act soon. Polls do not look good. Our last poll put us at 14% of the vote in an election. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as loyal. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Budget report. The budget surplus is 4.30 billion euro, but this is too small to act as a trigger to raise spending or cut taxes. Security briefing. Intelligence services report growing concern about a relatively small extremist religious organization known as Angels of Heavenly Justice. We should keep a close eye on their activities. The Angels of Heavenly Justice threat assessment is a 3. The Invisible Hand threat assessment is a 2. We have 13 political capital to spend. Let's take a look at income tax. Because we accepted our coalition partner's offer, it looks like the income tax has already been adjusted. We cannot adjust it ourselves. So the judiciary is getting out of line. This is the 3rd time the judiciary has done this mass sentencing situation. So let us see what we can do about judicial independence. Judicial independence. The separation of powers is a model of governance that requires the state to be divided into independent branches of responsibility. The judiciary is made up of nations' court of laws which interpret and apply the legislation of this country. Judicial independence is subverted if other branches of governments or private interests are allowed to exert influence over the court. This is the 3rd time that there was a mass sentencing in our country. We will be spending 13 political capital to lower judicial independence. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our 2nd term of our 1st year as Prime Minister of Germany in a coalition government. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering our 3rd term of our 1st year of our 3rd term as Chancellor of Germany in a coalition government. Let's see how we did. Freedom of information. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. There have been calls for a law to increase the availability of information held on databases about citizens without their knowledge. These include the records held by private medical companies, insurance companies, and debt collection agencies, as well as information held by government departments. Reject the proposal. Nobody likes the idea of the government holding information about them, but in some circumstances this needs to be done. The government isn't out to spy on everyone, but passing this law will just make it harder for the intelligence services to keep watch on serious criminals and terrorists. It will also affect a large number of businesses who have customer databases who will be swamped with yet more bureaucracy. Proposed Freedom Act. It's essential that we have this law passed, as it is one of the checks and balances required in any truly free society. The average law-abiding citizen should not be spied on or monitored by multinational corporations with computer databases, and the potential for abuse by government agencies if the citizens cannot view what data is being stored is huge. We will reject the proposal. The Liberals are unhappy at -13%. The state employees are happy at +5%. Policy reversal. Voters have noticed your reversal of position regarding judicial independence, and this has affected their perception of your trustworthiness. Private space industry. The private space industry is growing noticeably in our country. Although historically big space projects have been undertaken by governments, advances in technology mean that there is now a huge potential market for commercialization of space exploration and space travel, including private satellites, space tourism, even asteroid mining. Budget report. The government is currently running a budget deficit of 20.21 billion euro. We should take steps to reduce this. Polls report. The government is not so popular amongst its citizens. Only 35% of them intend to vote for you in the next election. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as loyal. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. We have 9 political capital to spend. Tobacco tax. Despite the failure of tobacco companies to admit it, there is a good reason to believe smoking has negative effects on health. This is used as a justification for taxing tobacco. Cynics point out that the government benefits hugely from a tax on a product it is supposedly against. Health campaigners encourage the tax as a way to encourage a more healthy population. This is 0% popular with the vote. Right now, our tobacco tax is 25%. We will spend 8 political capital to raise this to 33%. We will raise 0.80 billion euro. We will apply the changes. We have 1 political capital to spend. Needle exchange program. Drug addiction itself is bad enough already, and dirty or infected needles are an additional danger for drug addicts. To help out the needle exchange program will help the addicts get clean needles for their needs, while also offering them help in getting clean and living a normal life again. Conservatives may think of this as enabling, but liberals see it as a good way to fight drug abuse in the long run. This is 83% popular with the vote. We will spend 1 political capital to reduce this. This will return 16.62 million euro to the government. We will apply the changes. We have zero political capitals to spend, and thus we are at the end of our third term of our first year of our third term as Chancellor of Germany in a coalition government. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering our fourth term of our first year of our third term as Chancellor of Germany in a coalition government. Let's see how we did. The GDP is up. Merger. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. A large internet company has announced plans to buy out one of its main competitors. This merger needs government approval, but if it goes ahead, it will create one of the biggest companies in the country. Allow merger. There is no good reason to prevent this merger. In an increasingly global market, our companies need to grow if they are to compete successfully. The bigger company will be more efficient and effective in the global marketplace. Block merger. The whole idea of free market is based on competition. Allowing these two firms to merge will reduce both competition and consumer choice and no doubt lead to redundancies. It's another example of government looking after big business and forgetting the little guy. Small businesses and trade unionists urge you to block this merger. We will allow the merger. The self-employed are unhappy at -8%. The capitalists are happy at +8%. The GDP improves at +1%. The trade unionists are unhappy at -6%. Unemployment is up at +1%. Budget report. There is a budget deficit of 15.90 billion euro. We need to reduce spending or raise taxes. Polls report. Your approval rating is disappointing. If we believe the polls, you would get just 40% of the vote. Cabinet report. The loyalty of ministers can best be described as loyal. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Economic forecast. The global economy is doing okay. We are in neither a boom nor a bust cycle. Security briefing. The intelligence services report growing concern about a relatively small extremist religious organization known as Angels of Heavenly Justice. We should keep a close eye on their activities. Angels of Heavenly Justice. Threat assessment is a 3. Our security effectiveness is good. We have 9 political capital to spend. The economy minister and the law and order minister are unhappy with us. Let us fire the law and order minister. Let us hire Julia Plensdorf for law and order. She's 79% suitable for the position. Let us fire the economy minister. There is no one suitable for the economy minister position, so we're just gonna hire someone who brings us the most political capital. We are gonna hire Hetty Peters. We have 9 political capital to spend. Internet crime. With our high levels of internet usage and other technological items, we are seeing a sharp rise in internet crimes. Computer viruses that no longer simply break the target computer but hide themselves and steal the user's private information until detected, often to steal bank passwords or commit identity fraud, or hijack the computer and use it to perform further crime that's difficult to trace back to its original source. Intelligence services. Security services are an essential tool in the fight against organized crime and terrorism. Good, reliable intelligence can be difficult and expensive to obtain, and in many cases the methods employed can be unpopular with liberals and human rights advocates. This is only 1% popular with the vote. We will be spending 2 political capital to raise this to maximum. Improving our spy satellite network. We will apply the changes. We have 7 political capital to spend. Armed police. Arming the police officers can be an effective strategy in deterring crime and maintaining order. Opponents would argue that it encourages criminals to use firearms in a criminal arms race. Critics also worry that arming the police will distance them from law-abiding citizens. This is 10% popular with the vote. We are concerned about our organized crime and our violent crime and crime in general. This would also address our unemployment. We will spend 3 political capital to increase this to every officer armed. We will apply the changes. We have 4 political capital to spend. Cryptocurrency taxation. More and more commerce is handled in cryptocurrencies to cover the cost of tax evasion and tie new currencies to the fiscal system. Rules and taxation are required. An internet currency tax reduces the income of everyone trading in cryptocurrencies, mostly self-employed and small companies. Right now, our cryptocurrency taxation is at 67%. We will spend 4 political capital to raise this to 74%. We will bring in 0.84 billion euro to our government. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our 4th term of our first year of our 3rd term as Chancellor of Germany in a coalition government, and thus we are at the end of our episode. Thank you so much for stopping by our Cricket House. If you like what you saw, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you want to follow our future episodes. It really helps us out. Have a great week. See you soon.